I think this might work. I forgot that I'd broken my tripod. So we're going to have creative camera work again. We've had a bit of a hiatus from making anything because we got a dog. So now I'm not the dog in the family. I'm the dad of the dog. But I feel like it's part of this whole process of getting more engaged with the land and the environment. You know, like, although dogs are readily domesticated, they are still wild unless you create the structure for them to live within. Which is kind of a foreign concept to me because I have traditionally or innately prioritized chaos over order. Or, being the person to produce order rather than respond to it. Or, often push against it. But so I've had a lot to contemplate about nature, environment, society, humanity. Which is why we take on challenges and new projects. And I feel like a lot of the people I'm talking to are probably people who have projects or juggle projects. And, on the one hand, you can get into a flow where you do the same kinds of projects in different ways over and over again because it feels more comfortable. And then on the other hand, you can jump headlong into the next stage or the next project without any experience or precedent. But somewhere in the middle is probably best, right? Like, I don't know if everyone's seen that chart that's like, I don't know, it's something like stimulation and familiarity. And then through the middle diagonal, you've got the flow state. And then beneath it, you've got boredom. And then above it, you've got stress. Although it feels easier to be comfortable, in the long term, too much comfort can also produce stress. Like the yin-yang symbol is the yin and the yang flowing into each other, and then they've got the core of each other in the center or in the eye. Just because one side of things is appealing at a given time doesn't mean that it's not gonna flip over into the other side when you overdo it. But anyway, today I'm having black tea with kawa and rose, which is a new experiment. Black tea with kawa has really been my go-to drink lately. Not that anyone really cares, but it's just good. It's like a perfect fusion of my English roots and my New Zealand roots. And now I'm living in Japan. Not drinking the green tea hardly ever. But I've been thinking a lot about patterns in consciousness. Partly because, at least from the inside perspective, that's what makes up everything that we know and do, The patterns in your consciousness dictate everything you perceive. Whether or not you buy into this quantum physics idea that your consciousness is also having an active role in producing the makeup of the universe, which I think is a pretty convincing approach. But I've been reading Josephine McCarthy too, and she's talking about how there's patterns of consciousness in the land too, and in the environment. And so the way that we not just physically engage with the environment, but consciously engage with the environment affects the way that the environment responds to us. And obviously there's a consciousness or an intention element to the physical interactions we have with the environment too. A lot to think about there. Or explore and engage in and experience. We've gotten into this rut in society where we think we know everything, or we think that everything can be known and documented in a linear and logical way. And we've gotten out of touch of this basis of personal relationship with the world, like an existential, personal, subjective relationship with reality. I think this is why so many people are so fucked up, because we're trying to have these engagements with the world or with reality that are all external, like positioning things outside of ourselves without letting it infiltrate or influence the internal too much, or like within given parameters. But we get into this trap where it's like, if I can just get this right, like if I can just get the right combination of things, like the right combination of gestures, or the right combination of work, or work and pleasure, work and life, or the right combination of atoms or chemicals, then it's going to be good. It's going to magically balance itself. It's so funny how the purely logical can also flip back around into the superstitious. Because it's like, if I can get this right arrangement of things, then I'm not going to have to consciously manage it or take responsibility over it from then on. Whereas I feel like the actual answer is in, although we have to do external things, we have to be engaged externally too. I'm not really for this hermetic kind of like do everything behind closed doors, don't engage, purism. But I think if we lose that kind of direct engagement, and it's in religion too, like I feel like the scientific attitude has obviously come out of the Christian attitude as well, where everything's managed by the church, and it's, if you just tick these boxes, then you can go to heaven, whatever that is, without interrogating what that really is and how it works or whatever. But, letting it, like trying to find a perfect system for it to be managed externally so that you can slack off internally, seems to be the basis of where we're at now. Like work and economy are like that too. Like if you just have enough money, you don't have to be ethical, or you don't have to do the work to be happy. You just buy whatever you think is going to satisfy you. But ultimately it doesn't satisfy you, because the satisfaction comes from the internal work. Which is why I'm so obsessed, or why I think it's so important to develop a system or systems that promote and encourage and assist the individual to develop that internal engagement and that internal self-responsibility, and ultimately consciousness itself. Conscious responsibility over your life and your kind of lot, like your zone of responsibility in your life, of your life. Because they all have to be separate systems. Like your life, it's not just you and the world, or the world and you. It's a whole internal ecosystem intertwined with a whole external ecosystem. So all the different things going on in your life, this part is fulfilled, this part is stressed, this part is tired, this part is motivated, whatever. You know, the parts of you thinking about your partner or wanting a partner, or work or wanting a different kind of work, or food, wanting to be healthy but wanting to eat delicious things, or whatever. They're all flows of energy and qualities of energy, so to speak. You don't have to think about it that way, but it's one way of abstracting it to simplify it. And those qualities are constantly combining and then also interacting with external qualities that create relationships with different parts of you and create a bigger system. And that whole thing, that whole complicated thing is unique to each person, and what makes each person's life unique and also amazing on all these different levels, if you can spare a bit of time and headspace to observe it and enjoy it. Even the stressful parts, you know? Because, I don't know, it's like, it's almost a cliche now, but it's like the things that feel like they're almost going to crush you, or feel like they are going to crush you, are the things that lead to the most fulfillment, or are the most rewarding when you overcome them. And there's no way to think or organize your way through those hurdles. You actually have to go through them. You know, it's like going on a bear hunt. Can't go over it, you can't go under it. You know, you can't avoid the obstacle, because the obstacle is the way to the goal. But yeah, training a dog has given me these huge insights into psychology, my own psychology, and people around me, you know, relationships, how dynamics are built up in relationships. And I'm not going to reduce people to dogs, or say that, you know, we should be training people, like give them a treat, sit, give a treat, or whatever. But the whole principle of dog training is that you don't get angry, you don't tell them off, you don't give energy to anything negative. You, if anything, you ignore the negative things and kind of let them die. Like, you neglect the negative things, starve them, and reward the positive things, and completely create an emphasis on the positive patterns and positive behaviors. And it's made me... and the other thing is that structure is so important. Like, if they don't have familiar space for themselves and a familiar routine where, like, they know they're going to have probably this amount of exercise in a day, this amount of quality time, this amount of solo time, you know, chewing or chilling, this amount of sleep, then they get anxious and they like revert to instinctual kind of survival mechanisms. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that hit so close to home? That's exactly what's happening right now. We've gone down the road of let's just not have structure. You know, we're not there yet at absolute chaos, but we're getting quite close. We're getting quite chaotic. And we're seeing the outcomes of not having like a defined family structure. And I don't think it has to be militant. But we're seeing people just in fight or flight, or just in freeze, you know, stuck in these patterns at length, like going on and on and on in these patterns, because they don't have any boundaries to keep them contained. It keeps you existentially contained if you have some sense of boundaries, right and wrong, you know, rhythm, direction. And I don't either. Like, I don't think my upbringing was terrible. I think it was probably on the better side as far as the things that my family could control. And I think that there was a good level of strictness, and enough structure. Otherwise, I probably would have been a lot more, even more chaotic, especially like in my 20s or whatever. But I've got these parts of myself that don't necessarily know how or where to be contained or where to put focus, how to choose something to focus on, for example. If, if I've got options and they all seem somewhat valuable, I'm just like, and that could have possibly been resolved with more structure, not just in the family, but in society. And I'm seeing it in people around me too, who are kind of getting into their late 20s or early 30s and panicking because society hasn't given them a sense of direction. Like, I think we need to have a sense of direction that is not so confined that you feel trapped by it, but enough limitation that you feel the need to push against it and overcome certain things for your outcome, for your goal or dream or purpose or whatever. But it's like kids in the last 30 or 40 years are told you can do whatever you want. You could do anything. And that puts them, it's like sending them off out to sea or like out to the desert. And they're like, well, what the fuck do I do then? And then you've got this railing against structure as a reaction to it, as if structure is the thing that's making it hard for people. Yeah. But having a dog and realizing that giving the dog structure is what is going to make it better for her and ultimately better for me, because she's not going to be a psycho. She's not going to be biting and running around and running away and being disobedient, which is going to make it a lot easier for me and make her a lot happier, because she have a clear set of behaviors and states that are correct. It's also about knowing. It's not enough to say right and wrong or knowing what is the right thing to do, but when you can get the right answer. I mean, I think this is why Skool has become popular, even though it's not so practical, is because it's really easy to get the right answer. And then it gives people this sense of fulfillment. It is like dog training. It's like dog training to get people to work in an office or a factory, which is not really what we want. But having a clear path where it's like, where you're gonna get positive feedback by doing these certain things, can make a lot of things a lot easier. But it's also made me think a lot about, like, well, maybe that's why I feel so much stress at certain times, not all the time. But if I've got new things on my plate, and I'm like, sometimes have this habit of going into like a kind of, what am I gonna do? How am I ever gonna, But if you know when you've got time in the week, say, to do these things you want to do and these things you have to do, you can kind of just coast. Like the structures that you build up in your life are vehicles that carry you through life. They're not necessarily things that you have to climb over, like walls, or things that that are going to contain you. Structures are also kind of like machines and mechanisms and technology that can get us to the next thing. Like if you have a career, as long as you're not looking for any deeper fulfillment, it can just let you coast through because it's got the structure and it's going to do a bunch of things for you that you then don't have to do yourself. But the thing is, if you're looking for a specific kind of fulfillment, which is especially obvious with creative people, but I think also applies to everyone, because you've got things to express, you've got things that you want to see in the world, and that's the basis of your fulfillment, then you kind of have to build those mechanisms yourself. But art and creative media have kind of veered off and gone on this kind of just do whatever you want. But that's not it either, because we still are going to need limitation, because, limitation and structure are effectively the same thing. But structure is limitation for productivity or practicality, whereas limitation on its own is kind of just limitation. Make things harder. But these things that you have in your life, like these elements of your life, whatever they are, even if it's watching TV, if it's like say you're super into a specific TV show or a specific film director, or if it's drawing or making art or making music, if it's exercise like training, strength training or running or athletics, it could be anything, like all these different things, all the different things that you like, all the different things that give you energy or inspiration or motivation or take it away. Those are energetic mechanisms that you use to manage your life. And so making change or building new vehicles to carry you through life in a different direction or in a different way is not necessarily such a big task of creating a whole new mechanism, like I have to get a new career, so I have to start again from zero, or I have to get fit, so I have to start doing this now, or whatever. It's not necessarily starting something new. And this is also kind of an NLP idea, but you've got all these mechanisms in you already, and it can just be a matter of applying those mechanisms to different things, which can take some work and some technique or whatever. But that's where observation comes in as well. Know thyself. Like when you're observing, you get to step out of the patterns and see what the parts are. Not with your mind, because that's the same system. That's the old OS. But more with your being, with your consciousness, with all your senses, or with beneath your senses, and start to see how these interplays are made up. It's like if you didn't know that your limbs and your fingers and toes were separate things, and so you thought you have to move them like this. And then when you really observe inside your body and you feel that there's these different sensations and you can use these different impulses to move your hands differently, then that's how you develop dexterity, really. You start doing different things. You can learn to use your fingers more finely or for more subtle tasks. Or, like if you use tools, they become a different sense through the tool, but that you use in the same way as a sense in your body. So that you can apply it more accurately or more specifically. But with all manner of things, with emotions or thought patterns, with the way you interpret things that happen to you or objects or people. Those are all mechanisms that we've packaged into objects. Man, this is all NLP stuff today. It's good stuff, you know? Like, everything is actually a process. But if you're treating it like an object, like it's static and it's definitive, then you lock down your ability to interact with it or adapt it to something different. But if you can start to see things as flexible and fluid, then you can start to apply them to other things. It doesn't mean that they don't have their quality. Like, this is not going to bounce, but I might be able to use it in a different way. It's like seeing it for what it is and seeing yourself for what you are, for what is really going on right now, so that you can work with that existing state and not be creating blockage by, locking down the existing state in favor of a further away state that you want. Like, all the potential is you're not going to get to that far away state without operating the machine that is currently running. Okay, whatever. We should do this live one day so people can have tea together and talk. Let's work on that. Anyway, I'm gonna go teach some kids how to build boxes out of wood. Okay. Talk to you soon.